hi everyone there in Charleville. I'm here with Sister Bernadette Maria from Charleville Mercy Heritage Centre. This is not going to be like a normal interview. I'm going to let Sister Bernadette speak herself about the history and everything, and if there's any questions down the line, we'll ask them if they're necessary. So.
And welcome to the Heritage Centre here in Charleville. I'm delighted to tell you a little bit about the history of the Mercy coming to Charleville. So the story begins really with Catherine Macaulay on the wall here beside us. Catherine Macaulay was born in Dublin, and in 1831 she started the Mercy Order, and her vision was to educate the poor children, to look after vulnerable women, and to visit the sick. That went on in Dublin for 4 or 5 years, and here in Charleville there was a wealthy lady called Mary Clancy who was doing something similar and had the same dream as Catherine. So Mary Clancy went to Dublin to Catherine in 1836, and she begged her to come to Charleville to help the poor. So that was only possible because she had the blessing and permission of the parish priest at the time. Father Croke is here on the wall behind us. So in 1836, Catherine Macaulay came to Charleville with 3 sisters, and they had been provided with a house. The middle house in Clancy Terrace was Mary Clancy's property, and she gave them the house and £500 to help the poor. Now that was a huge amount of money in those days. So they came at the end of October via Tullamore. The reason they came via Tullamore was because they were travelling by canal, and a few months previously Catherine Macaulay had started a foundation in Tullamore. Father Croke went up to meet them, and they stayed overnight and came down the following day as far as Limerick, spent the night with the Presentation Sisters in Sexton Street, and came on to Charleville by stagecoach the following day. Now we're told that the house in Clancy Terrace was very damp and conditions were very poor there, but the sisters persevered, and after a month Catherine Macaulay had to return to Dublin to do the duties of the order. So there was Sister Angela Dunn left here with 2 novices. Almost immediately they began to visit the poor. Now at the time there were an awful lot of back lanes in Charleville, and there was great poverty there, so the sisters went in to try and alleviate the poverty. They also visited the National School. Now that's the schoolyard theatre. And at the time they went in and they taught religion initially, and then gradually they began to teach other subjects in the National School until they took it over completely. Now they were in Clancy Terrace for about 2 years. And as numbers increased, they needed more accommodation. So Lord Cork gave them the site to build the convent here. And this was built around 1838-39. Originally, it was a 2-storey building. And the sisters moved up here. They continued to teach, to visit the poor in the town, and to go wherever they were needed. Now, when this convent was built, there was a room given over as a kind of a pay school or a pension school in the convent. And in that room, children came and they were taught second-level education. Some could afford to pay for it, and they did so. Others were educated free. So life went on as pretty normal until the famine came in 1845, 46, 47, and the sisters were very busy trying to provide some form of help to the poor, the starving of the town. And they made sure that the children who attended the schools were given 1 meal a day. Now, when the famine ended, the Fever Hospital, which is the Mannix block of the convent secondary school now, that was no longer needed as a fever hospital. So Lord Cork decided that he'd hand it over to the nuns, and they could use it for an industrial school and an infant school, provided that cholera or any other disease didn't occur when it would have to be handed back. Thankfully, that didn't happen, and the industrial school and the infant school were moved up to what we call the Mannix block now. Now, in the industrial school, there were all sorts of crafts taught there, and in the 1850s, lace makers were employed to teach the women of the town how to do lace and fine crochet. And some samples of that lace are down in the table of the Heritage Centre. Now, another piece of interesting history in connection with the convent is the Crimean War. In 1854, the Crimean War broke out between Russia and Turkey, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of Irish lads in the British Army at the time. So there were nurses needed to look after them. And an appeal came to different convents around Ireland, including Charleville, looking for sisters to go out and nurse the soldiers in the Crimea. So 2 sisters from here, Joseph Croke and Sister Claire Lawler, answered the call, and they went out to Turkey for 18 months for the duration of the Crimean War. They nursed the soldiers and provided some kind of comfort and sustenance for them. Now, the table behind us here is the table that actually was in the Crimea. That went out, and the sisters' goods were inside it. It was turned upside down and used as a kind of a trunk, and that went and came from the Crimea. We also have a teapot down in the Heritage Centre that was used by the sisters outside. The conditions were absolutely appalling. The soldiers were suffering from fever, from frostbite, from malnutrition, from starvation. So the sisters who were outside did their best to provide them with some comfort. Many died outside, but thankfully many also came home. So Joseph Croke and Sister Claire Lawler are kind of looked on as real heroines for their role in the Crimean War. Joseph Croke wrote a diary, and that book is available in the local library, the Crimean Diaries, and Croke has quite an input into that book. So, as well as education, our involvement in public health services was fairly important. The Charleville sheltered housing is evidence of that. There was also the involvement with the daycare, the Macaulay home, Meals on Wheels, chiropody services, Vincent de Paul. 40 months that I was here before lockdown, over 4,500 people had come to visit. You know, school groups, active retired, men's sheds, craft groups. There's a huge interest in the lace. Again, the Crokes are a very pivotal element here in Charleville. It would take another hour to talk about them, but hopefully this centre will be opened up very soon after when the COVID is cleared, and I look forward to welcoming people back. So if you're out there and you haven't been to the Heritage Centre, you will be more than welcome. The tour lasts about an hour, and at the end of it we have a little chat and there's a cup of coffee available. So I look forward to welcoming many of you from far and wide when this COVID passes us.